It's part 1, muscles, upper extremity. Okay, page 347. When I say upper extremity, it means that we're going to be dealing with muscles that either originate or insert onto bones of the upper extremity, which begins, of course, with the clavicle and the scapula and moves on to the humerus and then bones of the forearm, wrist, and hand. Okay, so there's going to be 16 muscles that attach to the scapula alone. The scapula does not attach in any way, nor articulate, nor form a joint with any bone of the axial skeleton. Only muscles attach to the scapula. The scapula otherwise attaches to the humerus. Right? So no axial skeleton connection. So we're going to be considering muscles of this nature right here. Okay? And so we're actually going to be learning 3 muscles that attach to the coracoid process right here. And they're going to be considered, this one, the coracobrachialis, is going to be considered with the biceps, which also has a short head attaching here. Okay, but before we even get to that issue, I want to begin with this muscle right here. Do you see that? Now, this muscle is particularly well developed in athletes who are competing in such sports as boxing or various kinds of martial arts in which the upper extremity is being used, particularly in a pushing or punching motion. Okay, so there's that aspect to what is here called the Serratus Anterior. Okay, the Serratus Anterior. Alrighty, let's come over here and take a look at the Serratus Anterior, a fan-shaped. Now, this is an interesting muscle because it originates on ribs. It originates with the ribs 1 through 8, and then it actually forms one single complete muscle which goes to the vertebral border of the scapula. Okay, so you actually have to look at the back in order to see where the insertion is. Okay, so the vertebral border of the scapula is here, but the muscle itself is coming from these ribs, and it's going inside the scapula, and it's ending up on the deeper surface here at this point. We can't see it. We would have to cut these muscles and turn this out in order to see the insertion of Serratus Anterior. Another spot for us to look at Serratus Anterior, actually, is right here. Okay, so this is the origin. And again, they're only showing us the origin of Serratus Anterior. Okay, so this is the origin. Then it's folding around the back. It's folding underneath the scapula. And it's going to the vertebral, which means medial border of the scapula. So you have to imagine then that if you were to shorten this muscle, you would be pulling the scapula forward. Are you with me on that? Pulling the scapula forward. They don't really have a good picture of it here. I'm sorry to say that, but this is as good as it gets right here. And so you have to imagine, here's the origin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all these fingers. Now, if you look at a middle to lightweight boxing champion, they're usually lean enough because they're working so hard to make their weight classes that you can actually see these muscles very, very clearly. Take a look sometime on YouTube and see if you can find a middle to lightweight boxer who is able to display these muscles very nicely. Okay, so it's a pushing thing. We're going to shorten it. The whole scapula is going to come forward. That's going to bring the shoulder forward and the arm forward. So you open doors with this when you're pushing on a door to open it. You know, some of those revolving doors are hard to push. They're heavyweight, and you have to push kind of hard to open them. Okay, so that's the deal. Let's take a look here at the Serratus Anterior again, and they talk here about rotating the scapula so its inferior angle moves laterally and upward. So prime mover to protract and hold the scapula against the chest wall. Now, if this muscle becomes in any way paralyzed, which can happen, if you were to hit right here, if there was some trauma to this spot on the where do we see this? Personally, because we live here in the Bay Area and I have a lot of friends who dance, and the way that they make money as a dancer is to do burlesque or some kind of exotic dancing. They do pole dancing. And so they run up, grab the pole, and sometimes they hit the pole a little hard. And I have one friend who actually damaged the long thoracic nerve right along here. And she ended up with what is referred to then as a winged scapula. It's where the scapula pulls away from the ribs, and she wasn't able to push anymore until that nerve regenerated itself, and she got back her ability to use that muscle. Okay, what else do we have here is we have pectoralis minor. Pectoralis minor originating on ribs again. In this case, we're going to a different part of the scapula. We're going to the coracoid process right here. We're starting here, we're going here, and we're moving the scapula forward. Now, another way of looking at this is to look at the scapula as the origin, and this is the insertion. And so another thing that it does, besides drawing the scapula forward and downward, is that it can also draw the rib cage superiorly during gasping for breath. So forced inspiration is part of the program for this muscle. So I want you to be aware of that. Okay, and we'll pick up the next muscle in just a momento.